Throughout his career, Kazuo Ishiguro has won numerous awards, published numerous novels and screenplays, and seen 2 of his books made into films. He's now back with his first novel in a decade, and so joining us now to reflect on his work is author Kazuo Ishiguro, most recently the author of the book, The Buried Giant. Hi again.
Hello again.
Okay, let's pick up a little bit where we left off last night and still talking about your latest novel, the first in a decade. So the book, The Buried Giant, is set in pre-medieval Britain. The Remains of the Day, another one of your books, well known, was set in the years leading up to the Second World War. And I'm wondering, how do you match up the right historical period with the sort of emotional situation that you need in order to say what you want to say?
Well, I find that process very difficult. Part of the reason it takes me a long time sometimes to write a book is because I don't have the setting. That sounds like a crazy problem. I mean, I know some writers, that's the first thing they choose. You know, they want to write something, set in the Second World War or whatever, in Vietnam, something. I often don't have the setting. I mean, this is an honest problem for me. I often have the story worked out because I work out almost like I work out the relationships, I work out the emotions, that will bring out the theme, the questions that I want in my book. And then I have to kind of put it down somewhere, I go location hunting for some setting. And that's what often takes me a long, long time. So a book like Never Let Me Go, I tried it twice before I actually eventually wrote it. In the 90s, I tried it twice. The third time I attempted it, around 2001, I put it down in this kind of sci-fi-ish dystopian world. And that's what enabled me to do it. Until I thought of this kind of cloning, organ donation idea, I couldn't get the story to work. And so there's often some kind of final piece of the jigsaw which has to do with often not just the historical setting, but if you like, the literary setting, the genre, if you like. Until I can find that, I often can't actually get my books to fly.
Right.
And that was the case with this one too. Part of the reason it took me a long time was that, as I said to you yesterday, I mean, at the beginning I was drawn towards real historical situations in recent history of communities in conflict. And it took me a while to try and find some place that was neutral. I did actually entertain the idea of galaxy far away. There's always that solution. But I guess the problem for me is there's often something I need slightly odd to happen to get my story to work. In this particular case, I needed some situation where everybody in the country was suffering from some kind of selective amnesia. So how do I bring that about? So a dystopian setting is one kind of solution. There's some sort of weird power, that's a dictatorship, and that's doing this through scientific means. But I thought actually it would be quite fun to go way, way back into the past and use myth and fantasy. Right. Use a kind of a slightly magical mist.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the genres because Never Let Me Go was classified as science fiction. This book, The Buried Giant, is being, I guess if I went to a store, it'd be sold under fantasy. Do you like those labels, or do you find them limiting? Where do you come in on this?
I don't particularly like labels. And I don't like labels as a reader, and I don't like labels as a writer. And when I'm writing, I don't try to think of these labels at all. And in fact, perhaps naively, I didn't think of the fantasy label at all. When I was writing The Buried Giant, I mean, because I'm like somebody just trying to make something. I'm like one of those guys before airplanes were invented, properly, who trying to make a flying machine in my backyard, and I'm just kind of doing my best. I have no prototype, and it might look really strange. I don't quite know what it would look like at the end. I just need it to fly, and at the end, I make something I think it more or less flies, and someone looking at it will say, "Oh, that looks really strange. That looks like a flying dinosaur. That looks like that looks like a boat with wings or something." But I don't really see it as that. You know, I've been kind of desperately trying to get this machine to fly. And it's only after the fact that people say, oh, is this a sci-fi book? Is this a fantasy book? I mean, yes, I've got those elements in it, but I like the idea that, you know, writers should be able to use anything they want, you know, without prejudice from readers or kind of...
Or genreists.
Yeah, genreless. Yeah, I don't like any kind of imagination police looking over my shoulder when I'm writing, and I don't like imagination police when I'm reading. You know, I don't like kind of snobbery and about genres. You know, I don't like people trying to create a hierarchy about genres, saying some genres are more worthy or more literary than others. In fact, I think we're at the moment, I sense we're at quite an interesting and exciting time in our reading culture, because I think all these things are breaking down. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the barrier between what used to be called popular fiction and serious fiction is breaking down. I think the walls between so-called genres are breaking down. You know, fantasy, science fiction, literary fiction, detective fiction, everything is merging. Particularly the younger generation of writers and readers, you know, are quite free and unprejudiced about mixing these things. And I think in the end, genre is something that's not that, it's not that profound in a literary sense. I think it's basically a marketing tool that's put on by the book industry and the movie industry, whoever it is, you know, to help market certain products in a simple way. You know, you get it to a particular demographic. It's not something intrinsic to the creative process or to the imaginative reading process. You know, so I think we've got to loosen up about genres, and I think that's where we are at the moment. I think it's an exciting time. I think the parameters of what is thought to be literary fiction, I think, are shifting now. You know, people who are supposed to, you know, undeniably, you know, great literary writers, people like Margaret Atwood or, you know, David Mitchell from Britain, you know, they delve into everything and mix everything, whatever they need to create, you know, great stories.
Okay, let me take your great flying machine that you put in print on pages, and then this is going to be your third novel that's going to be adapted into a film. So Never Let Me Go and The Remains of the Day. How effective, your great flying machine's there, how effective do you think someone who takes over your great flying machine and puts it on the screen, how effective do you think the adaptations have been to carry on to get at the heart of what you're really trying to say in your books?
Well, I don't know yet whether whether we'll have a film with The Buried Giant. I'm very optimistic because one of the most extraordinary movie producers working now, Scott Rudin, has had the option for about a year, and he has a very imaginative approach. And so if anyone can do it well, I think Scott will be able to do it well. So I'm optimistic, but the Rudin movies is you never count on anything, you know, and even when the film is made, you know, nobody may see it. So you know, you never sit back and say, yes, you know, it's happened until it opens at the Toronto Film Festival or something like that. Sure. The two movies that have been made from my books, I think I've been fantastically lucky. They've been more or less 100% positive experiences for me.
Did you get really involved in them?
No, I think I was about to go on to say this. I think it's partly because I don't get too involved. You know, I think I know some authors like to get quite involved in the creative process. You know, I've worked as a screenwriter as well. And I kind of think, by and large, that's not a good idea.